Good morning again.
Good morning.
In our chair's absence, Chair Martinez Beltran is performing BTA duties this morning, so she's unable to join us. So here I am, your vice chair in her stead. So would you like to take roll call?
Yes, thank you. Vice Chair Meadows.
Here.
Director Scozola.
Here.
Walia.
Here.
Klein.
Here.
Tyson.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum of our committee.
Okay, so first order of business is to see if there's any public comments on items that are not otherwise on our agenda. I don't see public in the room unless they're behind me. Any public online?
No hands raised online.
All right, so we'll move on from that. And we have one item on our consent calendar, which is our minutes. Are there any comments on the minutes? Any public comments from our non-existent public this morning?
We do have public, but they
have?
don't have comments on this.
Okay, we have existent public, but no comment. If I have no discussion on the minutes.
First moves approval.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, roll call. Or do we, we're all here.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Just do call the question.
All right, so all those who approve the consent calendar?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, good. Let's move on. Item number 2, CEO update.
Good morning, Executive Committee. So first, a couple of event reminders. On May 29th, we'll be hosting, along with Friends of Clean Energy, a special event. It's actually a special board meeting of the Silicon Valley Clean Energy's board called Maintaining Momentum in Uncertain Times. And this is a look at the 2025 energy codes. Zoe Elizabeth, who's here as well, she is coordinating this event. Unfortunately, registration is now closed for this event, but I know that several of you will be in attendance, including the majority of you here. So, and therefore it is a public meeting, I have to remind you all. And then we also have an exciting event coming up on June 7th in Morgan Hill at 9 a.m. We'll be doing a ribbon cutting for the Butterfield Fire Station, which we have made all electric with solar and battery. And there will also be a pet adoption event there too. So hopefully you all can attend that event and pick up a dog or a pet, whatever.
Or 3.
Or 3, yeah. Okay, and then yesterday, just a couple of things. We wanted to maybe give you some updates verbally since we're here. Yesterday, I sent out an email about the recent action on the budget reconciliation bill and how that might impact our operations. And so I just want to assure you that we're on top of this, even though it's really hard to keep on top of all of this. It changes every day. But one thing that we can do is, help our customers with their journey as much as possible. And so to that end, I was going to have Pam talk a little bit about some of the outreach we intend to do. And I just put her on the spot this morning, so, give her some on in.
So Monica, you put me on the spot, but good morning, by the way. But our wonderful marketing team has already put together a draft plan that I have in my hand. So we are, I think one of the fortunate things with some of this unfortunate news is we're really well positioned to talk to our customers about incentives. We have the eHub, which was recently redone as an incentives finder. And we just did a couple of really successful residential webinars where we had hundreds of customers that were very, very engaged and had a lot of questions. And so we can do more webinars. Our monthly residential customer e-blasts that we do, where we talk about all of our programs, we're going to focus on take advantage of the incentives that are available now. From a messaging standpoint, we don't want to be alarmist because some of this is not, final yet. That's also just not really our style to kind of make it sound like there's too much of a sense of urgency. We also have tools like the solar and battery assistant that is part of eHub. We know that customers have a lot of questions, and especially given the 30% tax credit available for solar and battery storage installations. That is one of the higher amounts. And so that is something that we plan to kind of front load because that does take a longer lead time. So those are just some of the ways that we'll embed some of this messaging in communications that have been planned and leverage the resources we have, and also direct customers to some of our services like assisted home upgrades, which we just put the press release out for that this week, because that helps streamline the process of getting quotes and just makes it simpler for customers. So we
I
think that's.
just drove it yesterday.
Oh, yeah, how did it go?
Yeah, it went fine. They gave me 2 contractors for my upcoming water heater.
Great.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so let me first see if any.
We have one more update too.
Oh, go right ahead.
Then you guys can ask
Okay.
questions. The other big news that came out was that the federal government said basically that California cannot implement its clean air rules related to phasing out natural gas or gasoline cars in 2035. I was gonna have Zoe do a little bit of an update and then you guys can ask some questions.
Yeah, okay, so quick update. So this has been in the conversation of something that the new administration has been contemplating. And for, folks that have been through this a few times, often when a Republican administration comes on, there's a battle over California's clean air waivers. So just in the last Trump administration, EPA withdrew those waivers. And then what follows after the waivers are withdrawn, as is this time, there are then battles in the court. California won those battles the last time. But so there's a few things that are different about this process. One, the California standards for moving aggressively towards all electric vehicles had changed since the last administration, right? So these sales targets had really ramped up. California's granted these waivers because we consistently have some of the poorest air quality in the country, so we're not able to legally meet clean air standards, which is why we're granted them. Different this time is that instead of using kind of that regulatory pathway, the Senate basically overruled the Senate parliamentarian, which is something that does not happen very often. And there's big battles right now if that is a legal thing to do. The reason that it doesn't happen very often is that a party is usually concerned that when the next party comes in, they will then be able to change the rules of the Senate and kind of game that system. So there was even some standoff at that, if they were actually going to go do that, but they did. And California is now preparing a lawsuit. The other thing that I think is just worth noting, in addition to our more aggressive standards, is that this time, typically California's had like a coalition of automakers that are kind of supporting our move. And this time around, a lot of those automakers were actually pushing and lobbying against the clean air waiver. So that just sort of put some questions into what that will mean for the general trajectory as this is figured out in the courts.
Okay.
Why the shift then of the automakers in there?
I don't know that I have kind of an answer to that. I mean, the economics of electric vehicles have been challenging, but then probably there's also changes as the consumer tax credits are starting to go away, right? That's going to shift the certainty of demand for automakers. So I'm just hypothesizing kind of all of those reasons. There's also been a lot of investment in the supply chain over the last few years, kind of to push towards more EVs. So we'll see if that was enough of a shift to make the economics work out on their own.
Can you repeat what's the exact specific with the overruling the parliamentarian? What exactly? Like, I kind of want in a nutshell. So when I have a talking point.
Yeah, so the Senate parliamentarian, they are like the referee
Right.
of the Senate, right? And so they had said, no, you cannot use the Congressional Review Act to withdraw these waivers. They said that is against our rules. The Government Accountability Office said that is against the rules, that's not legal. But the Senate decided to overrule that referee and go ahead and remove the waivers.
So that's what people should be focused on is the Congressional Review Act and how that was revoked essentially.
Yeah, overruled.
Overruled.
Yeah. And California's lawsuits are.
Okay.
Beginning.
Got it. Thank you.
Which our state funded for
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
ahead of time, some of them anyway. Do we have other questions? Yeah, go
Question
ahead.
about the event on the 29th. What kind of attendance are we getting at? Because were all our city councils invited?
So we
And
were.
then alternates as well?
Yep.
Well, I guess.
All city council members, city managers in SVCE territory, PCE territory, and actually all of Santa Clara County, because we are partnering with the cities association. Were invited, and there are close to 60 folks registered. And I haven't counted, and there's over about 22 different jurisdictions.
Good.
Other questions? I have one, and this might be below the radar, but given what you were just talking about, what are the odds they go after the vacuum med changes?
Multifaceted kind of question. I'm sure somebody is going to go after those rules. Southern California, there's already a lawsuit against their rules. They focus on larger water heaters. But the tactic that is taken, or if it's a lawsuit, we will have to see. But all of these things, when they go forward, there's lawsuits and pushback. So we'll see where kind of.
But as of now, the rules are still planning to, the point of
Right.
sale limitation is still planning on going forward.
Yep.
We haven't heard anything otherwise,
Yeah, I
right?
have not heard anything otherwise.
Okay, good. Public comment on any update? No? Anything online?
No, no, no.
All right, so thank you for the cheery updates. So next we have a very exciting item, a request to cancel the June 27th executive committee meeting.
And I should speak to that. So staff has reviewed what we have coming up for you, and there is nothing pressing to bring to you in June. So that does not mean that we would not meet in the event something pressing does come up, but we wanted to just make you aware that we don't have anything really large for you to consider in June, and if you would like to cancel, then we can do so.
Any questions? Director?
I have a quick question. In case you want to keep it open, I'm thrilled that you don't need it and you can cancel. I'm totally for it. But I'm also hearing the other part in case something comes up. In that case, getting people to attend the meeting with our schedules becomes a challenge. Am I hearing a 50-50 that if possible, don't book something else for that date, but assumed cancel or what?
Yeah, we don't have anything that we need to
Okay.
have an action item, because typically we come to this group when we're taking something to the board that we want for the a deeper consideration on. And since we've canceled the July meeting, staff's just gearing up for
Sure.
August.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So we'll have the July exec committee meeting
No, we actually don't have a July executive committee. That one was canceled from the initial.
already.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking. So for the August board meeting,
If we feel like we might have to call a special executive committee meeting, then Andrea will reach out to you all and get something for late July.
And that was going to be my question. It's like, okay, from a timing standpoint, I couldn't remember if we canceled that. Yeah, it makes total sense. We just canceled another meeting, and I'm glad that this was on the agenda because as last year, if you remember, this is the morning of the torch run. So I was probably going to have to exit this meeting anyway because I'll be running along El Camino sometime between 9:30 and
Olympics?
no. Northern California Special Olympics. So they run through the Bay Area. It ends up in Santa Clara or like a ceremony Friday at noon or something, or Friday at 1 that they, but I was running with our public safety officers that morning. So it was already on my calendar that I was either going to cut out of here early when they got to this point and run away, or depending upon what the agenda was, I was going to drop out anyway, so.
Picturing you with your number on.
No, right, we all have shirts for that,
Well,
so.
maybe if staff is open that morning too, maybe we can go cheer you on.
I'm sure there'll be lots of people out.
Right on.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's
Cool.
not a gas torch.
I'm afraid it might be.
Yeah, it might be.
All electric from now on.
Yes, there you go.
Any other questions on this item? Any public comment? You're not gonna protest that we're gonna cancel June.
You know, I love being here.
But.
Not being here is okay too.
Okay, and no remote public comments?
No hands raised on my.
All right, so then I'm gonna go ahead and call the question. All those in favor of canceling the June executive committee meeting?
So moved.
Oh, yes, we need a motion.
So moved.
And
moved.
seconded by Klein.
Okay, and now I'm gonna call it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? One opposed, all right. So, item number 4.
All right, so I think we have Zach Leske on, he's the Deputy Director of Power Resources, gonna present on this, but before he starts there, maybe just provide a little bit of background on what CC Power does, or California Community Power. So we're a founding member of CC Power. We established CC Power really to, 9 CCAs did in Northern California, to try to meet some compliance obligations we had related to the midterm reliability procurement order, specifically related to the long lead time resources, so long duration storage and firm clean resources. And so we were successful in signing 4 contracts, and so SVCE participated in all 4 of those transactions. The board approved all 4 of those transactions. CC Power really exists because of the members. So we run CC Power. They have a small staff, which has been growing incrementally every year. But so they're now up to 3, and they're going to get a little bit bigger next year. But really, CC Power is run by the members, by these committees that we have, whether it's a project oversight committee or working group committee or a budget committee. We have a lot of committees. We support them behind the scenes as well in some of the administrative stuff. I'm on the board of CC Power, and I'm also on the ad hoc committee for CC Power's budget development. So we have a lot of oversight there in terms of how they create this budget and allocate costs. So with that, we are requesting approval of the budget, and I'll hand it over to Zach on that.
All right. Thank you, Monica. Good morning, everyone. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So our recommendation, which is in the staff reports, we're asking the executive committee to recommend that the board approve the annual budget payment for CC Power, starting with their next fiscal year, which is a July to June fiscal year, in an amount not to exceed $500,000, and delegate authority to the CEO to enter agreements using those approved funds. And this budget enables SVCE to continue its membership and project participation as a part of CC Power. So what we're looking at for the upcoming fiscal year is the latest budget calculation that they've done, that CC Power has put together, is showing our share to be about $386,000. We're asking for $500,000 as a buffer in the event that we are going through with all of the member agencies, member CCAs, have to go through their own approval processes. And so in the event of some contingency that something were to change, we want to make sure that we have all the authority necessary. And if we had to pick up an additional cost, we have the headroom. Last year's budget was $657,000. That was our share. And you can see in that the table showing the stacking, and we'll get into the details of what each of those bars means. There's dues, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 costs. And we can go to the next slide. And as Monica mentioned, so CC Power is a super JPA. So it's 9-member CCAs formed looking to do power procurement primarily where there's economies of scale that exist, or if it's a project that would not make sense for only 1 or 2 CCAs to potentially do together. And so to date, the primary focus has been on procurement related to the CPUC's midterm reliability procurement order. We've signed 4 contracts for power resources. Tumbleweed, which is a storage resource, Goal Line is a storage resource, and Fish Lake and Ormat are 2 geothermal contracts. And we can go to the next slide. So what is the budget composed of? There's a few categories: dues through phase 1 through 3. Dues are the covering the overhead, making sure the lights are on, there's computers to work on. So it's general costs. Everyone pays an equal share across the board, all 9 members. Then phase 1 costs are where we start to get into projects. And at this stage, it's exploratory projects, things that maybe there's something there, maybe there isn't, but it's an opportunity to explore in a joint setting where everyone's able to pay a proportional amount and potentially get exposure to something they may not pursue individually. Phase 2 is where we start to get to a point where it's an opt-in basis. So when we think of phase 2 projects, this would be we're actually going to take on some activity. We're going to do some procurement of a resource or contract for some service or offering. This is where allocations of costs start to get on a custom basis based on who's involved and their level of involvement. And then phase 3, this is opting in, sign contracts. So when we have a power purchase agreement that we take to our board for review and approval, that would be considered a phase 3 agreement. And so again, these are custom basis based on how much we're participating in that agreement. And so those are the main categories. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is the prior fiscal year. This was, or that's still the current fiscal year. But 657,000 was what our share was, and the categories, dues in phase 1 previously were bundled. So for this upcoming year, it's been broken out, be a little more granular. And in the last year, we had a $657,000 budget across these categories, and we didn't spend or need to spend all of it. A big portion of what we were planning to do was this build transfer agreement solicitation. We did the solicitation. This is part of the Inflation Reduction Act, where there was the opportunity where public entities could own a power resource and receive the tax benefit. We did the solicitation, but did not pursue any projects further. It just didn't make sense at the time. And so there was a lot of funds available that we didn't use. So that's where you can see the year over year. Last year we're at 657,000. This year we're down under 400,000. And so with that, and as well, phase 3. So this is projects that are signed PPAs and things. We've, as SVC has seen with projects that get delayed or take longer than expected, the same thing happens with CC Power projects. So we had, expected that there'd be some project management costs that we did not incur. And so we didn't quite use everything we expected last year. And so now this year it's come down a little bit. We can go to the next slide. So this is our phase 1 for the upcoming year. And the boxes would be the different activities we're exploring. And so things like, doing an annual solicitation where CC Power is making itself, a known market entity where they're procuring resources on behalf of members, looking at some transmission and distribution, education, strategy options, emerging technologies. I think a big area that CC Power is looking to leverage, that it doesn't make sense for us to probably with staff time and the resources we have to dedicate doing that ourselves, but in a joint setting, really good opportunity to look at, is there some emerging technology that maybe makes sense for us to potentially invest some amount on. Next slide. This is phase 2. And so the highlighted boxes would be the ones that we are planning to participate in. So the 3 there, geothermal origination, so seeking additional geothermal resources. It's a very scarce resource. It's hard to find. And so we're pursuing, all avenues to potentially find it. New long duration storage. We're always looking at, opportunities here that batteries, we have a lot of batteries in the portfolio that are 4-hour duration batteries. So long duration is an 8-hour or longer battery. And so that's something, along with alternative storage, we're kind of looking at what's in that realm. And so we're pursuing some projects there. Next slide. All right, and then this is the things we've signed up for that we are, 4 of them. We're in for the long haul: Tumbleweed, Goal Line, Fish Lake, Ormat. Those are long-term PPAs, 10+ year agreements. And so what we're asking for here, the note on the side, is that we're not asking for authority on the contract, the commodity costs associated with these contracts. That's excluded. That's previously been authorized when we take those agreements to the board. All we're asking for here is the overhead operating expense, just to manage the contracts, make sure we're doing our jobs. CC Power is doing their job on ensuring everything's fulfilled. And then there's a few other kind of ancillary items, computer-based trainings. Wood Mackenzie is a market intelligence service, and then Gridwell, they provide a resource adequacy report on the market. And so those are small dollars relative. Let's see, we can go to the next slide. And this is just another call out that we have the Tumbleweed Energy Storage Project, which will be reaching commercial operation about this time next year. And if you are seeing, there's budget figures for CC Power that show, SVCE paying, upwards of $1 million, but that includes a huge chunk of commodity costs that we've already budgeted for. We go through that process when we get the PPA approval and then our annual budget. Those costs are really, it's like CC Power, think of it as a billing agent, that they're sort of the in-between us and the PPA seller. And so we have all the authority necessary on those. But just as a heads up, this is a project that will be coming online and we will be spending pretty sizable dollars. All right, next slide. So next steps. So we're kind of with the sequence here. So earlier this week, Monica voted on the CC Power budget at CC Power's board of directors meeting. And that approval is contingent on the SVCE board approving the budget, and that'll be next month. So today, we're seeking the executive committee's recommendation to put this in front of the board, the full board. And then, June 11th, we would seek board approval on the consent calendar, and then all goes well. Starting July 1, CC Power would start their new fiscal year and bill us for our share of costs. And I think there's one more slide. It just has the recommendation again. And that's all, unless there's questions or comments.
Okay, do any of the directors have questions for?
Sure. So just trying to get a better idea from CCA Power and how like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 projects are. Are they all bundled and split evenly amongst the members? Do you opt in or opt out? So
Yeah, for phase 2, like Zach mentioned, it's an opt-in model. And so if we want to further explore a particular project, we actually have to sign a cost share agreement. And then, so the costs associated with phase 2, you're then obligated. And that cost share agreement, most of the times is just equal. We all pay the same. But if we decide to make it based on load share, we can do that as well. And then phase 3, that's when we're committed. We're going to bring this to the board if it's a big project that exceeds my dollar authority. And then again, we have to opt into that as well. And then we have a big contract called a project participation service agreement that the board would approve so that we can participate.
So from the presentation for phase 2, and showing the different boxes, are we not opting in for offshore and RA optimization? Is that why those boxes were undarkened or not squared? Yeah.
Yes, there are some members who are still interested in those 2 projects. We have found that given the state of those projects.
I didn't notice that either. I just,
That's why you said the highlight,
Wow.
the outline.
So it's the only 2 boxes in the phase, in all 3 phases. Okay.
Yes, so sorry, Zach, I'll chime in here, but you can.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have decided not to preliminarily participate in those. If things change and they seem more viable in our opinion, or like we feel we need them for our portfolio, because we don't need them for our portfolio right now. And they seem like they're a little bit kind of not so much risky, but just not viable. That's why we asked for some additional funding. So we said, we're asking for 3 something, but we could go up, our budget share is 3 something, but we can go up to 500,000, because that gives us the option to add, to join later if we decide it's something that we really want to participate in.
Okay.
Yeah, but as of now, we're saying we don't want to participate in it.
And for me, the biggest question there was the offshore wind. Because of the Trump administration basically halting all new applications, the concept of missing out on an opportunity for wind. And not the expert on how our portfolio does, and that's what staff is there for, but the concept of if we think that wind is important, chance at least as I remember from reading, the current applications that have been approved will move forward, but nothing new from offshore wind will be allowed, at least for the next 4 years. And so
Yeah, it's not even, it's certainly the federal government and their executive policy made this less viable.
Right.
Or less, or riskier. But I think for us, we believe that in terms of for our portfolio, out-of-state wind is much more valuable.
Okay.
It's less expensive and it provides just an equal type of generation profile that we need. And we see a clear sight of development, like we could sign a contract and know that it's gonna get built in 5 years. The infrastructure and everything for offshore wind has not been developed in California.
Okay.
So it's a long shot. And the state of California has already said that the central procurement entity that they've established in the Department of Water Resources will be the entity that procures that resource on behalf of Californians, if offshore wind is ever gonna get developed.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
And it's like a 20-year out thing. And so, and the CCAs we're not on the same page on this. Some think that we should be in the forefront. In my opinion, it's kind of chasing windmills, quite frankly.
Really?
I've used that so many times.
Well,
Not publicly.
I like that. So, just as a general thing, so of the different, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 things, what's the normal breakdown of, and I understand each of the 9 are deciding their different needs. Is it normally like 8 or 9 per project, or does it drop? You know, and it's that buying power, but it's also the commitment of the overall organization. It's like most of them are like, oh, all 9 are moving this project forward and want a portion of the power that's created, or is it like, well, we partner and, you know, usually it's 3 to 4, or just a general,
Yeah.
what's your feel for
So I can,
what's on the table?
Zach, correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, on the long duration storage resources, the first project, 6 of us participated in. The second project, 5 of us participated in of the 9.
That's right.
On the geothermal projects, I think it was 8 and 8, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and it's, that makes total sense, okay. And I think that was all my questions, thank you.
All right, thank you. Director Talia.
Thank you, and thank you, Larry, for asking those questions. And I wouldn't have been able to put it that succinctly, so I appreciate that even more. I was thinking along those lines for quite a bit of that. So my questions, I will pick up from there. The first is partly a remark and partly a question where your response is, Monica. So thank you, Monica and Zoe and Sitlali, for coming to Saratoga City Council joint session Wednesday, 2 days ago with PG&E and SVCE. So that was great. Board members at SVCE, we spend enough time to understand so many intricacies and the complexities of this industry. One of the questions that was asked was why in 2024 we at SVCE did not make the clean targets. And it's not a simple picture to respond to. So I'm just picking that up as a question that somebody else asked. Going back to offshore wind as an example, especially given the Trump administration situation where we know we are headed for more difficult times, what else are you planning for long-term? Because whatever is being planning now, and I'm talking specifically CC Power related, that's going to give us the results and to plan for the next couple of years. So we are not put in the position of a simple looking question being asked of us again.
Sure.
And then I have some other specific.
Yeah, I'll speak in general, then Zach, and if you could talk a little bit about CC Power's current solicitation efforts, maybe you can, but yeah. So it was a good question, and certainly, you know, our portfolio since day one has been a mix of things. And since the beginning, it was all short-term resources. So 100% of our portfolio from 2018 to probably like 2023 was just short-term products, things that we bought from the market. And as we signed more and more and more long-term power purchase agreements, and some of them actually started to come online, which started like in 2021, it shifted. And so we now have a large portion of our portfolio in the future that's going to be met through these long-term power purchase agreements. Every year we do a solicitation, and we just issued our latest solicitation yesterday to procure additional long-term resources. So we are very much on track to meet a 75% our renewable portfolio standard by 2030. Granted, there could be delays, but we do a lot of scenario planning. We do a lot of like, what if this one goes out? What if this one gets delayed? So we build in a buffer and we sign additional long-term contracts. We've also signed some carbon-free contracts that are more longer-term in nature to make sure that we get to 100% in the near term. So as of now, we're pretty certain, unless something drastically changes, like we have a really dry hydro year, or the Diablo Canyon goes offline, or we have a big load growth in the next couple of years, that we're going to be 100% plus in 2025, 2026, and 2027. So we're situated for those years. As far as, and so we view CC Power as an extension of us, an extension of our buying power. And so they also issue their RFPs, and maybe Zach, you can talk about some of their efforts right now.
Yeah, so CC Power actually recently, I believe it was last week or the week before, issued a solicitation for geothermal resources. So they're looking at, and this is I would say on the horizon, it's very far out there on the horizon. It's potentially very early stage projects that are going to take their time to get developed. So right now, CC Power's efforts are longer term procurement decisions that SVCE are internally we're still very highly capable of meeting our needs in the short run, the next few years, and that's what we do every day, is constantly monitor that period of time. And so yeah, there's also an opportunity in the upcoming year that CC Power is going to do solicitation for a range of projects, and so we'll get an opportunity to see what there may be offerings there that make sense, that could be in the nearer term or longer term. And so it's always keeping our options open, and as Monica said, it's an extension of us, and so always seeing where we can make something work. And especially with developers now, a lot of times they want to build big projects. They don't want to do small installations. And so with 9 members, it's potentially can get that economies of scale treatment really working in our favor. And so that's a really key point that we're able to pursue there.
And thank you, Zach. And that was exactly what I had in mind, piggybacking on the comments made by Larry. So with that in mind, a couple of very specific questions on the ask in this agenda item. And Zach, you mentioned there are some funds available from last year's allocation. And so this 500K is in addition to that. How much is there from last year?
Yeah, so the 386,000 figure includes a rollover from last year of approximately 200,000. And so those dollars we did not use, but we're able to use in the next year. It levels out our costs. It's not additional expense. There were dollars there that we can use for the next year.
So this includes the 200K from last year, about.
That's right.
Okay, okay, it doesn't automatically, okay, that's good to know. And so that means we spent about 450 or so last year. That was 657. And I know their fiscal year is different than ours. So
right.
that makes it a little awkward to kind of correlate directly with ours. And one question and one ask. The question is, what are the other alternative storage that you referred to in one of your slides when you were talking of new long duration storage, batteries being 8+ hours?
Yeah, so we've generally looked at lithium ion type batteries.
Right.
And so we're pursuing different technologies, including compressed air and pumped hydro. So very radically different type of projects that maybe they make sense, and it's definitely they make sense to pursue in a joint setting.
Okay. Thank you. And the ask is, Monica, do I remember correctly, even last year, there was this awkward situation because of the timing of the CC Power Board meeting that you had to vote there and it came before. So my request is that somehow it looks cleaner as an organization for us and simpler for you not to have to vote their contingent on SVCE board approval.
Yeah.
Can you work with them so next year you are not put and we are not put in this awkward position of you having to say yes there and then get SVCE board approval?
So I agree with you, and all of the CCAs that are participating in CC Power have essentially the same situation. And I think part of it is just because they're the nature of them being a somewhat new organization. They're still trying to figure out how this budget thing is going to work and how to allocate costs appropriately. And so last year we kind of went through a process and then we're like, hey, I think we need to rethink the allocation process. That's why we came up with a split on phase one and put some different things in phase two and really looked at the priorities again because we were seeing that the budget was just growing and growing. And so that just required time, quite frankly. We just could not work through it fast enough to get to our board first and then come to CC Power's board, because we just didn't know what the number was going to be. We didn't get the final number, but we're working on that. The other thing, the way that we kind of worked around some of this at Cal CCA, though, is if you recall, a couple of months ago, I went to the board and asked for multi-year approval. And so, tell me that I can approve up to a cap. And that way I don't have to do this contingent voting. I would have recommended the same, we could have done the same thing with CC Power, and I just asked for a general authority, but because of the nature of CC Power, and the types of projects that we're approving, I didn't want to get a blanket authority for CC Power. So, but next year will come a little earlier before we actually have the vote at CC Power with the budget recommendation.
That's my request. And I appreciate that you didn't get a multi-year approval for this. It makes sense that the exec committee and then the board at SVCE reviews it. If you can, Andrea, maybe next year flag it earlier enough in the year so that Monica can pursue with CC Power.
It'll be a very unless CC Power, it'll be very preliminary budget.
Right.
So
That's
the challenge. Yes, exactly,
Right.
exactly. It is just from a governance perspective, it looks cleaner because I remember we talked about it last year. It was awkward for you, it was awkward for the board to go through that. So last comment. So essentially the $386,000 includes 200 from last year rollover. So literally you're asking for almost only 200K extra this year and a buffer of another 100K. Okay. Thanks.
All right, well, thank you. Well, the presentation was clear. I tell you, you've sold me on CC Power and its value to this organization, not that I needed to be sold on. It all makes sense. And, coming from an industry where we do product development and we tend to have a lot of things early and then fewer at later stages, the totals you've got, and then also the reduction in phase three kind of goes along with what I saw was a very large increase in phase one from compared to last year. So I'm with that. Now that so far this is easy. Now that comes a hard question. And as in the context of the earlier discussion and given the timeline to do projects, with the federal tax credit reduction, should we be pushing the gas or the brake on more phase one projects?
Phase one or?
Phase one.
Good question.
Like, are they all gonna be dead, so we shouldn't work on it? Or, if we work on them, we'll hope, oh no, I shouldn't say it. In the event that there's a different administration, they're propelled and ready to be implemented.
So
How was that?
yeah, so CC Power has an RFP out right now for geothermal, or an RFI, is that what they called it, an RFI?
Yeah, an RFI.
And at the same time, they're having discussions, we're having discussions about what are the types of things we can accelerate procurement on at CC Power. So that's CC Power. Each individual CCA is doing our own procurement, and we're, like I said, we just issued our RFO yesterday. And so we all understand that there's kind of a bit of a, kind of compete against each other in some ways, but there's a race to get projects built as fast as possible because of the changes to the PTC, ITC benefits that are coming out with these as part of the budget reconciliation bill. And the developers know that too. The developers, last year, they were kind of like, oh, I want to talk to you, maybe, I want to talk, now they're all coming forward saying, we need to get a project, we need to get a PPA. So everybody is kind of, everybody's moving like that. We're all moving fast. So, yes, we are pressing the gas as much as
By the
possible.
way, I didn't mean gas when I said gas.
Accelerator.
Accelerator.
That's right.
Everybody's aware of that, but again, it's gonna be a market, it's gonna be a frenzy of people trying to buy and sign contracts, and that creates its own unique challenges.
And thank you, Director Scozola. Okay, I just have one question. So thinking ahead, and thank you, I was gonna ask whether it's a consent or discussion, and you confirmed it's a consent item.
Provided that's okay with.
Provided that we agree with that. So in case there are board members who might be curious about the amount, sort of on an absolute basis, have you done any quantification? I mean, you've talked about the benefits, but have you done any quantification on cost savings and other benefits that you can sort of put that in to give it context? You know, things that we wouldn't be able to pursue because we don't have, you know, the standalone strength, or we're getting a discount because we only have to invest X amount in a project. Have you attempted, and I know that's a hard
We have,
thing.
well, I don't know, Zach, unless you have, I don't think we have as an agency tried to calculate the benefit cost ratio for CC Power. CC Power, part of it is just an investment in creating an infrastructure capacity and a new buying tool.
Right.
So in the first years, it's probably not gonna pay off, right? When it will pay off is when we find a technology that we're able to de-risk by sharing in the participation. Where it will pay off is if we figure out a way to provide joint services where we each have to go out and procure our own services, whether it's for scheduling coordination, for something else, and we can get a better deal by doing it between the 9 of us. But we have not, you know, it would be wrong for me to say that the benefit cost ratio is positive right now, because it's not. We have to invest, we have to develop, we have to get there. But the idea is that it will be in the long term, but more importantly, it would also de-risk some projects that we would not have done on our own, either because they were too big or because the technology was still too nascent.
Okay, and I understand it. I'm just trying to look ahead and see.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's a hard one to say, like,
Yeah.
could we have gotten a better deal if we'd done this by ourselves versus doing it with some other,
Right.
that's a really hard thing to
Right.
say.
So I think we have some follow-up questions on that.
Maybe a suggestion on your presentation is that somebody just seeing $500,000 and saying, what's that? I think it'd be good to highlight the fact that there's 200,000 that we didn't spend.
Yeah,
And this
that
includes
too.
150,000 of kind of contingency. So really the total number here is not so large.
Right, and it's an amount not to exceed,
Yes.
not an amount. And
Also
were
good.
you gonna?
So I was going to make that suggestion, and the second suggestion is in a qualitative manner, maybe just a sentence or two, explaining what you just did, Monica. You don't have to say it's negative right now, but it is positive in the sense that it's easy to understand, we get better deals when we are working together. Secondly, we are not spending the time and effort chasing resources that somebody else would be, and then we are competitors. And we may not get something, so at least when we go together, we're going for larger projects, which will give us better deals. And there are others, as I said, we're not wasting time and resources. Looking after something where here we are in partnership with our other 8 CCs.
And we're investing less to de-risk newer technologies. So just all those benefits on one page, I think might help keep us in consent rather than it getting pulled anywhere.
Just a
You know.
qualitative description would really help.
Yes.
And you noticed the question, that's what I was going to say, so thank you, George. I was asking, okay, so how much is rollover? Is it, I could see it didn't get used, but a little more narrative on that would help.
And just not to pile on, but the fiscal impact section, we just need to be better, let's say, defined on, you know, what funds these are coming from, or if it's a fund or if it's general fund, from an organizational standpoint. And especially if we had money left over from last year. So just as we're talking about how this is allocated, from an organizational standpoint, what we put into like the fiscal impact section for our staff reports, I think might.
Just as a general.
As a general rule,
Suggestion.
because, you know, Director Wally had brought up a great point and I didn't catch that or it didn't really fall out, but it's like, okay, we're really talking about, you know, the 200,000 that was left over from the previous fiscal year direction. I don't know if that, how that was captured in our current budget, but it's those sorts of things, it's like, which fiscal year budget are we affecting? This much is rollover and from a
Okay.
allocation standpoint. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox.
So I'm gonna take us to public comment then. All right, do we have any public comment? Mr. Hardy?
So a couple of thoughts occurred to me as I listened to the presentation. The first one is, why only 9 members? I believe Cal CCA has 23 or 24 members. Is it because the dues are too large for a small CCA to feel that they can afford? Which then made me wonder, does Cal CCA have a dues structure based on the size or revenue of the member agency? I don't know the answer to that question. But if 13 or 14 new members joined CC Power, that would throw $3 million more per year into their base budget, which would presumably reduce SVCE's contribution in future years. So those are the things that are on my mind.
Thank you. Any public comment online?
No hands raised online.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the executive committee then and see if anyone, if we have any further discussion or if anyone would care to make a motion. Director Clark.
I'll move staff recommendation with the appropriate comments that we've passed and definitely this is a consent calendar item, but I do want to make sure that the presentation itself is made as part of consent.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. No opposed. I should say not any opposed, not no opposed. Okay, that passed. Let's move on to item 5. I'll be very interested to hear about the customer survey results.
Oh, yes, I won't do an introduction because I don't think it needs an introduction.
Okay.
So I'll just- yeah.
All right.
There we go.
There we go. I have arrived. So I'm just kidding. Okay, so thank you. Good morning. Every year, Silicon Valley Clean Energy, we run a residential customer survey. We really want to hear directly from our customers to understand their priorities and we get a lot of insights that we use that we embed in our marketing, our messaging, and our outreach. So we have some key takeaways. It's a really lengthy, robust survey. There's a lot of information. It'll be attached in the board packet. So we plan to share the full survey findings in the June board meeting on consent. But for now, I really just want to kind of take out some of the key highlights because for the most part, a lot of the results are as expected, which is a lot of things are pretty steady. So just some background and the methodology, you can see here how many customers responded and in what languages. We send this out via email and we send out a postcard. Everyone who completes the survey gets a $15 gift card. And there was a little bit of a weird timing issue this year, given the survey exhaustion around the elections. And then you are in the holidays. And so we're calling this our 2024 survey because only a month into the new year, it's based off of, really the 2024 environment. And this is also an effort to measure how our outreach and education work. How are we doing? Because it's something that is super qualitative. It's not like there's a GHG reduction measure per heat pump water heater, right? Like it's an effort that we took on before we started mass outreach, before we launched eHub the first time around. So we've been doing this survey since 2020. And we also like to look at the results. We stratify it by socioeconomic vulnerability index. The reason for that is
We just know that the barriers to adoption of electrification is gonna vary by socioeconomics and language access and these other parts of that make up this SVCE measurement. And this gives us a nice regional view because you know, we didn't want to do it like city by city, for example, right? Because within a city, you're going to have these differences. So that's how we look at the results. Okay, getting right into some of the takeaways. I'm actually going to start with the 71% there. This is actually this is consistent. We've seen once prompted, have you heard of Silicon Valley Clean Energy before? That's actually a really, really great result. On the other hand, the first question, this is a blind survey. So the vendor that we work with to implement it, there's no SVCE branding. They're not saying this is coming from SVCE. They're just saying, who do you get your electricity from? Of course, majority say PG&E first. But something new we did this year is that we added some nuance. We say, okay, yes, PG&E provides electric delivery services. Do you want to answer the question again? 21% said, oh, Silicon Valley Clean Energy does the generation. So that was actually really great. We feel like that's a really good finding. And obviously lots of work to do because we're building a new brand, right? A new entity up against over 100 years of history. So it's going to take time. But here's where we see that what we're doing is paying off. This is just one of the questions that, there's a lot of questions measuring awareness. We've put so much time and effort into our digital engagement, right? We have a really robust email marketing platform. We're doing advertising. We're doing like next door. We're on social media, like everything. To see this jump over the years in customers that say they're coming to our website is tremendous. Really, really happy to see this. And they are coming, the first reason they're coming is to learn about electric rates. And then they're also coming to learn about our rebate programs and electrification resources. We added a new question this year, given our affordability focus area, to try and evaluate what customers value most from what Silicon Valley Clean Energy is providing to the community. And not really a surprise, but the overwhelming majority said that keeping the cost of electricity low is super important. There wasn't, all this context around the question saying, well, but, keep in mind Silicon Valley Clean Energy only controls a third of the bill. So, that is the one bit of nuance there. But then I do think it's also important that we are staying the course because then number two is people still value the importance of generating electricity from clean sources. And that, anyway, that's sort of the takeaway there. And programs and services are important as well. So, how we're using these insights, I just want to give some examples. So affordability focus area this year, you can see them live. Actually, think down El Camino from here. There's one of these bus shelter ads. So we're running this payment assistance and efficiency resources campaign right now. We're seeing some really positive results in driving customers to our payment assistant and rate webpage. And then again, highlighting our investment in clean resources. So our team, I think, does a fantastic job of utilizing all of the content that we generate when we go out to these ribbon cutting events and just being able to amplify the investments we're making and the progress there. Technology specific, we get into questions. So again, we're focused on the technologies that we have resources around, primarily with our eHub, since that's where most of our digital outreach and education is focused on. And this is also an interesting one. We ask about purchasing decisions. So what do you consider ranked from 1 to 4 is the most important? And when you're making decisions, when you're gonna, buy appliances for your home. And so we are all very environmentally minded, obviously, but from a customer standpoint, that is not the selling point. I know that kind of came as a shock in the early days for us to be like, no, let's not talk about greenhouse gases. Sorry, folks. We need to talk about the health and safety benefits, right, is really up there. And so that has really, you've seen probably how that's been embedded in our messaging. And then of course, cost, that's where we heavily rely on talking about our rebates, incentives, and then also the lifetime savings for operational costs. Cost again, top barrier when we ask for the barriers to adoption of each of these technology types, but then if you kind of go beyond that, we can see that these are the key things that for us, it helps us to inform diving deeper into sort of the myth busting and the information that we can push out to customers as we want them to consider adopting these technologies. Another example of how we're using these, so people are focused on cost. I actually forgot to mention this at the board meeting, but I left it on the dais at everyone's seat. We call it our program's pocket guide. These flew off the shelf. We actually ran out of these at our Earth Month events. So people really shout out to our marketing team. Sunny particularly put this together. Even they were like, oh, are you gonna be okay with us doing the little dollar sign? We're like, I was like, hey, whatever gets people's attention, let's see how it works. And it's really interesting because it's really comprehensive. So that's just how we're using some of that messaging. And then also this is a snippet from an email that's promoting our electric vehicle rebate program. And we're just also connecting it to, hey, this is better for the environment, like leading with the air pollution that gas vehicles cause. Another interesting insight, we ask, how do you get information about these things? This one in particular, I wanted to call out that for people who don't already own EVs, where are you going to get information about EVs? Number one is friends and family. And we think about all the work we're doing for marketing and outreach. It's all around your classic marketing funnel, where the really broad stuff is just getting everyone's attention. But ultimately, as they go through the stages of considering electrification and adopting technologies, and then we have an ongoing relationship with these customers, becoming advocates, those are the trusted friends and family that we're trying to get people to that point, because that's where people are going to get their information. So we really like that. And this one, measuring year over year, there's amazing growth in interest in certain technologies. Last year, the big change was, from a statistically significant standpoint, was an interest in heat pump heating and cooling systems. There was a huge growth there last year. This year, interestingly enough, it was home EV chargers. I have to dig into that a little bit more, but you can just see that there's continued growth. And then we added some new options this year that we'll be tracking in future years. So in summary, this is sort of what we expected for some of the broad awareness, but what I just shared were really sort of the new, most interesting takeaways for this year. We're really using these insights to inform our work. We're not just guessing what we think people know and don't know. We always reach out and try to get that information informed by the customers. And then there's just opportunities as we get into the kind of differences by socioeconomic vulnerability index, these different quartiles, that we know that there's just some more outreach and education around some of our programs that we can be doing some more targeting. So we'll keep that in mind.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you. Pam, great job. Thank you so much for the fabulous work you do. The website has come a long way. We know you have been working on it and constantly evolving it. So it's showing the positive results. A couple of clarifying questions. The participation trend, you said you've been doing it since 2020, the survey. What's the trend in terms of percentage? I think our number of absolute customers hasn't increased that dramatically. So maybe the number of people who have participated in the survey. Do you have any idea?
Oh, yeah, the participation number in the survey is, it kind of goes up and down. I think one year there were 600 respondents, and this year they actually had, there's been a harder and harder time getting people to respond to surveys. This is something that all of our, the researchers out there that I speak with, like consistently, they find that this is just their survey fatigue. How many times do you get like a research poll texted to your phone? And so it is a challenge. We have some interesting lessons learned from some other surveys that we've run that we will implement in future years. But to hopefully answer your question, it's always a representative sample based on what they consider to be statistically significant in the results.
Okay, just curious, thank you. So the other question I have is that you mentioned, I think your last slide, that the growth in technology this year has been more on EV chargers versus last year was HVAC
It was
systems.
heat pumps, yeah, heat pump HVAC,
So
yeah.
I'm thinking, why? Because on the one hand, the early adopters of EVs have already done so. And if my memory serves me right, we are not seeing that high trajectory. And now we are more likely making EV charging happen in multifamily dwellings. So if there are home EV charger increase, does that mean single family homes are adopting more EV charging?
Yeah, I think that was the, can go back and look at that specific part. I'll look it up and get back to you on that, but I think, that was their takeaway, was that it was the interest in EV adoption is the correlation that they're seeing, especially for our service area. Is more people are adopting EVs, therefore there's more interest in home charging, where, it seemed like, you know, maybe people were relying more on like workplace charging or other public charging. So that was some of the thoughts that went into it.
And which SEVI category would that fall into? Because single family home and owning EVs is a specific category. Just keep that in mind. But then I'm thinking about our conversations earlier in this meeting about the tax rebates going away at the end of the year. And so if we are already seeing this increase in home EV charging, we want more people to buy EVs this year. I think it would be beneficial for SVCE to put in a more concerted effort to get the city's permit department moving faster. I once again base it not because SVCE needs to do that, but I base it on the fact that for sure my city's community development department is overwhelmed with other stuff. And a couple months ago, I know I talked about one resident who was saying, I already got it. I have somebody coming to install it. Why can't I get the permit? So you have been working hard. I'm just seeing, again, the burden unfortunately comes to SVCE to get the end result by the end of the year. That's kind of a long way. I'm just connecting the dots here. What more can we do if you're already seeing higher adoption and more interest in home charging this year?
I'm gonna pick up on that because I don't know if the conclusion is correct. There's another interpretation, which is there's more multi-EV families and they're getting second EV chargers. So can you tell that from your data? No. So I don't know that your conclusion is right. It could be, I know people who've had second EV plugs put in, so I don't know if you're picking, if that's picking that up.
I'd like to know, and that's
Yeah.
why I was going very slowly and asking, so is.
So maybe
does
it's
this
a
mean single
question
family
they
homes?
asked, you asked this year to tease it out, because I don't know that conclusion is correct. But anyway, I want to keep us moving, so.
That'll be too late by the time, Sally, to get more. My goal is essentially this year, what more can we do before the tax credits go away, so we don't see that drop next year? That's the only point I'm trying to make here.
Yes, so just, I found some more, I found the spot I needed to refer to here, and this is an indication that these EV drivers have been finding other ways to charge outside of their home, and that the difference is pronounced with renters than owners, which makes sense, given that they, you know, would like to have the desire of charging at home. So yes, yeah, that's mostly that people have been charging elsewhere, and then there's a greater interest.
Okay, but then it comes back to the same thing, if we
Right.
want more, then,
So are
Enough said.
you,
I'm
yes,
good.
you're good with questions?
yeah.
Okay.
Building on this just a little
Sorry.
bit. I was wondering if SVCE does any promotion when it comes to, obviously, people are adopting EVs more and more. And that's why people are looking at having more and more home charging stations. And I can tell you from experience that a lot of single-family homeowners that have tenants, you know, oh, I own this house and I have tenants, they're paying their rent. they're adopting EVs as well, but they don't have the charging station there. And so I'm thinking about, is there any promotion that we have where instead of from the tax credit side, we know those are going away, at least for a little while. What about the write-off potential? You know, it's like, hey, look, I invested in this house. I've had this house for a long time. And they're begging for things to do to their home that they own already, so they can use it as a write-off. So I think charging stations, solar, everything, all of this stuff that we believe in, those are beautiful write-offs for single-family homeowners. Multi-unit obviously can do the same thing, but I think that's a way that we can completely shift our messaging, you know, in the meantime, when we lose these rebates, it's just like, hey, remember write-offs? Remember that? It's kind of like a rebate, but maybe even more. You might get more money back.
You're talking about when they sell their home.
No, I'm talking about improvements. Improvements. You can totally write off improvements, whether it's paint or a charging station. You invested money, you definitely improved the home. Here's your thank you. Here's a nice big tax break for you. Just a thought.
Director Klein.
Sure, several things, just kudos for the outreach and slowly raising awareness. If nothing else, website traffic in itself is showing that at least, you know, the value that we're providing is that increase of word of mouth and all the events, you know, staff is at tons of events in all the jurisdictions, so that makes a big difference. As far as the data, historically, when do we do that survey? Just generally, and I understand we chose a time and election time wasn't good. Post-election this year, we do a national survey every 2 years. This year we did it in February just because we had meetings in that we wanted data for. That being said, it was a little more generally negative than normally. Historically we did it midsummer. Everybody's happy in the summer, a little bit freer and all that. And so just historically, I don't know the best time, but conceivably we need to focus on that and conceivably move that, but
That's a great observation because yes, the survey administration timing, also, you know, external events have happened that have swayed things one or the other. I mean, our first survey was done amidst a pandemic and so yeah, we're looking to shore up more of our research capabilities. We have an RFP out now with some like more market research focus. And so I think having it on a regular cadence in a non-election time of year, not post-holidays, like I think to have consistency there to reduce the variables would be ideal.
Consistency is important for.
right. And that's what we found, that it's like, oh, we need to reset again back to where we were because it just seemed a little bit different. And there's not a perfect time of the year anytime. It's like, oh, we're traveling and all that. So you don't know what kind of response that you'll get. Looking forward to seeing the data, how much data we will be getting for the board meeting. So age breakdown, I'd be interested, I'm assuming whether or not you already own an EV, whether all that kind of data is important. This was an online survey only?
I believe customers have the option to take it over the phone, but no one's been taking up that offer. So we might have phased that out because no one's been doing it.
And then do we have a good feel, one of the big things going through many years of surveys in different ways, of the number of dropouts that we have of they've started it.
Oh, we don't have that.
And then what we normally do is like, oh, if it's like a 10-minute survey, or it takes 10 minutes to fill out, bubble clicks and all this other stuff, how much dropped out after a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and that conceivably helps say we need to shorten our survey, or how many people are actually, we invited and they're like, oh, I got through 5 minutes and this is just taking me. So that's kind of useful. And then cost, I think is rapidly become a big thing, and whether or not that's cost of energy or cost of equipment. So highlighting the rebates and all that, I think becomes important from this organizational standpoint. Cost of energy, and this goes back to messaging. we're a third of their bill and, you know, I forwarded to Monica a month or two ago, a person going door to door saying, we're going to give you solar panels because Silicon Valley Clean Energy is charging you so much. And it's how we message that of, you know, 2/3. But cost, I think, only in today's world is becoming more and more of a focus. And so, you know, what we can do from this front. And so I'll be interested to see all the data. I love kind of going through that at the end of the day. And then lastly, jurisdictional, how spread were we as far as, I mean, that's also being captured in the part. Okay, that's enough.
Okay, Director Tyson.
Sure, thank you. And I guess the big takeaway for me was the concern about cost, but also I see the lever you're talking about safety. I mean, yesterday on the news, there was a car fire where they couldn't get the fire out. So I think we have to look at safety in different ways. It's an important thing. Regarding this, the survey itself, is it sent out to a target that's 450 something, very few people? So was it sent to a certain number of targeted demographics? I didn't catch that.
So we do a randomized sample. We actually sent it out to 40,000 customers.
40,000 and you get
Whoa.
450 back?
Abysmal,
Wow.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah. And we, yeah, it's very low. So when they said that this is a challenge that we are facing
Right.
across the board, but I will caveat it with, you know, our wonderful partners here, you know, again, they do a lot of these and they're seeing this. We did a different survey it was actually informing the ELEC decision the board just voted on.
Mhm.
And I will say shout out to Michaela for running that survey on our own in-house. We did a different structure for the incentive. We got 800 responses on that one. So it did like a lot better. And I think it's because we learned, so we're learning all these really interesting lessons. So
Was
we'll
it
change
the
the incentive amount.
Same amount that went out to 40,000-ish people? or
It went
for that
to
one?
a smaller amount of
Oh,
customers.
so,
And it was the changes of like a guaranteed $15 gift card is not an incentive as the chance to win a $100 bill credit for 5 lucky winners.
oh.
So apparently
Fascinating.
psychologically, that
Yeah,
made
yeah.
a big difference. Anyway, getting too nerdy into my stuff now.
So
We can talk on
I want to,
So
yes.
if we're getting that few, now I start to question, now I don't know what this means when so few are responding. So that's a question. And also, I like what he said about parsing the data, but you need more. It's just statistical significance. You're gonna need more responses to be able to pull it into demographics.
And I'm gonna tag on to that just briefly, then I'll come to you. The language was not the languages
no.
were not proportional at all.
Mm-mm.
There was hardly any Mandarin,
Right.
it just wasn't proportional, so that, which, and I'll just make that comment.
Mhm.
Director
Very quickly, thank you. I observed that for the induction cooking, 73% are not interested. So without taking too much time, very quickly, ACMED rules, health and safety, you talked of earlier, how we are presenting it rather than environmentally sensitive impact on cost, impact on your health and all of that. So messaging wise, or is it something we need to reconsider incentives? I'm not suggesting you do. I'm just saying, take another look at it, which I'm sure you already are. And once again, it goes back into the permitting because two things in my mind. Some people like to cook with gas. They're so used to it, they will not switch. And I know the transition is hard. I've done it 4 times in my life, back and forth. So the transition is always difficult. The other thing is to get your electric permit from your city, you need it to switch from your cooking from gas to electric. Because you'll need to go to 240. The voltage changes. So you need to go, and that could be a barrier. I'm just bringing it to your attention. That's it. Just some food for thought. Nothing more.
Okay, thank you. Public comment? All right, Mr. Party.
So I love surveys, I love data probably as much as anyone in this room. One of the things I'll note is that the survey went out simultaneously with the LA wildfires. And I'm not sure if at that time, electrical power had been identified as the likely culprit for causing all of that humongous amount of loss, death, damage. So that's a tee up for why I think health and safety need to be separately asked. I think they're 2 different things. So Whenever there's a power blackout, it's hard to sell induction cooking, right? Because we're all, oh my God, it's an unreliable source of energy. When I think of safety, I think of fires and explosions. When I think of health, I think of some subtle increase in cancer risk because I have a gas stove. But others may think of them entirely differently. And so I think it's really important to break that out. And I think even before you ask too much about it, you would like to gather information on whether people think that electricity is safe. Do they think that natural gas is safe? Do they think that propane is safe? Do they think that charcoal briquettes are safe? Because all of these have actual certain risks, but are people aware of them or not? And if you're not aware of the risk, you can't rotate to something that is less risky. I also found the conflation of convenience and performance to be a bit puzzling. I'm not sure exactly why those are together. To me, performance feels like it's associated with cost. Am I getting bang for the buck by having a high performing, inexpensive system? Anyway, the other thing I wanted to know from a marketing standpoint is a gender split. So are women more concerned about health and men more concerned about cost, or something like that? Certainly in the early days of the solar industry, we were always selling to the man of the house while the wife tapped her foot and said, why do we need this? So gender issues, I think, would be really good to add if they're not already in the analysis.
Thank you. Any online public comment?
No hands raised online.
All right, so I'm gonna wrap up this discussion. It's very interesting. Obviously, we could go on, but we're not going to, and we're gonna move on to item number 6.
Yes, not as interesting. And I'm doing this one.
I'm gonna stand.
I think you
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so this is, we do this every year. We talk about our strategic planning process and we kick it off here at the executive committee level with a discussion about our priorities and more specifically what we call the strategic focus areas. This one? Okay, so here's our process here, just laying it out again. Today, we really want to just hear directly from you all about our existing strategic focus areas, but more importantly, give us feedback on you if you think we need to start to prioritize differently. Slide. This is what we do every year again. And so you can see the little man is a little bit further up the steps, but not quite there. So it starts with this really kind of what we call an enterprise risk management program, where we do a comprehensive assessment of a lot of risks and opportunities driven mostly internally, but also looking to see what's going on in the world around us and what others are doing. And then we get to the strategic focus areas and the strategic focus areas feed into the budget process along with the risk assessment. Go to the next slide. This is our overall process. So we run in parallel with the budget process. And so Amrit, seeing our CFO, later this month, we'll be presenting to the Finance and Admin Committee a budget framework along with the initiation of our stress test. And that's where you really stress our financial position to see what type of events would lead to us being in a really bad financial situation. And so granted, he looks at some really extreme situations, but he'll also explain to you, even in the expected case scenario, which is what we are planning for, things are not looking that good on a long-term basis in terms of financial position, given a whole bunch of changes. So you'll hear that, you'll hear it at the board as well. And then you need to kind of consider that as we look at the strategic plan and the strategic focus areas. So you have to be in 2 camps here. Next slide. So just a reminder of our strategic planning process. Every year we look at our mission. I don't think our mission has changed since day one, but if the board decided that we need to rethink our mission, then we would have to kick off a bigger discussion about, is our mission our mission? But I'm going to assume that our mission is our mission. And for that reason, unless someone tells me otherwise, we're not discussing the mission. So it's really about the strategic focus areas which drive our goals, and the 2 of those combined drive our internal work plan and the measures that we operate to throughout the year. Next slide. So there's a lot going on in the world, and you're all aware of all the uncertainty and everything that's happening, whether it's the executive orders, the budget reconciliation bill, new tariffs, new legislation, and regulations at the state level, the looming state. I can just go on and on and on about it, all of the things that are kind of driving how we decide what we're gonna work on this next year. And do we pivot? Do we do things differently? Do we allocate new resources somewhere? Do we hire more people? All of this goes into our annual kind of think process. Just to highlight one that we think our customers and our member agencies really care about is, these policies at the federal level. All of it feels like a lot of talk, but it's going to amount to something at the end of the day. And that is, it's just going to be harder for us to increase the level of EVs, heat pumps, rooftop solar that our consumers are adopting. It's going to make it harder for us to build these clean resources that we need to meet our goals and the state's goals for our long-term 2045. And it's going to drive costs up. And when costs go up, and we already have an affordability crisis, people are going to have to make tough decisions about how they're going to spend their extra money. And maybe they spend it on electrification measures, or maybe they spend it on food and other measures. That's our reality that we're facing. Slide. So, this is a very simplified assessment of the situation we're in. Obviously, we have a lot of discussions about this internally with our other CCAs through CalCCA, through CC Power. So this is just a synopsis of some of the key challenges and threats. And I'm not going to go through all of them. We've talked about them quite a bit already, but again, these are driving our thinking right now. But we also see opportunities, and we certainly have a lot of strengths. And so I'm going to start with the one on the bottom. We have a healthy reserve, and Amr's going to talk about that through the budget process too. We're in a very good financial position. We're nowhere close to where we were 5 years ago when we were looking at some similar challenges. We've built up quite a reserve. We've built up more awareness of our product and our brand. I think there's a lot more acceptance of clean energy technologies, whether they're in your home or higher. We've managed to keep the lights on in California, even as we increase the grid's generation of clean resources. So there's a lot of good things that we can talk about here. There's some opportunities even at the regulatory level that might make things better, and a big one is about regionalization. I guess that's at legislative level. So we've talked a lot about regionalization, but if this passes in a way that makes sense and we're able to really share in our costs and resources with neighboring agencies, this could reduce costs for all of Californians, including our ratepayers. The CPUC has recently initiated a new proceeding that they're called the Reliability and Clean Power Procurement Program. This is really important, and this is something that we've been monitoring for the last 3 years, because in a sense, it avoids these procurement mandates that they've been using as a very blunt tool to get people on track to meet the 2045 goals. And so those procurement mandates are problematic for 2 reasons. One, they force the sellers to have a lot of leverage over the buyers, right? Because now we have a compliance mandate. And so that drives costs up, and it creates all kinds of other things that we don't like during the negotiation process and even post-execution. Secondly, they're not fair in how they allocate them. So the CPUC has not been allocating procurement orders based on our individual portfolios. They've been allocating it based on a pro rata share of load. So it doesn't allow us to build optimal portfolios, power portfolios, to meet our needs. So in a lot of cases, some of the resources that we procure don't meet the requirements because we procured them too early, believe it or not. So we have to over procure. That causes increased costs. That causes additional risk. And that doesn't help us meet our affordability challenge at all. So this is a good thing, and we're following this proceeding very carefully. And then of course, we have an extensive offering of programs. When we talk about the challenges that we're hearing coming out of the federal government, we can deploy resources and programs and even increase budgets to get our customers to adopt electrification, to put in EVs. We're all set up to deploy faster if we need to. So a lot of good things going on here too.
Add a strength,
Sure.
capable and motivated staff.
100%, 100%. All right.
I agree.
Yeah, we're all mission aligned. I'll add that to the next one. Next slide. I'm not gonna spend too much time on here because, I don't want to be Pollyannish. I don't want to say that, everything is rosy because we know it's not, but that's Amrit's job. Amrit does Amrit and now Scott as well. They're gonna do a great job explaining to you everything that can go wrong and everything that we've looked at. So I'm not gonna talk about that now. You can go to the next slide. All right, so today we have 5 SFAs or strategic focus areas that the board approved with all of your input. And so today we're just gonna look at those. We're gonna give you our own internal report card or grade on how we think we're meeting those. Our challenges and opportunities we think around all of those, how we might modify them. But really it's for you to give us feedback if those are the right ones or not, because the strategic focus areas are board priorities. So these are the 5 that the board adopted. If you recall, expand affordability efforts, expand clean, reliable grid actions, expand offerings to our C&I customers, prepare the region for electrification at scale, and attract and retain employees. I'm not going to read these all, but next slide. So this is I'm not going to say it's an ABC grade. So the color is just where we think we're at right now. Affordability is a real hard one to tackle, and we talked about that. But we've made some progress in educating and so on, but it's still active and more needs to be done. The yellows are the ones that we've made a lot of progress, but work continues. This is things that we think we can actually help or make a dent in. And then the green ones are the places that we think we're in a good place right now, given the current conditions. So for the affordability strategic focus area, you can see we've done a lot in a very short period, because this is not even a year, right? The board adopted these in September, it started in October. So, and we've been providing quarterly updates, or Andrea has, on specific things that the board has adopted or big initiatives that we have planned related to the strategic focus areas and the goals. So you can see here, we've done a lot. We've increased our outreach to customers. We maintained our 4% discount. The board approved returning $35 million to our customers. We're very active in several proceedings right now. There's a lot we've done, but there still continues to be challenges. And the big challenges being that, we can't control 2/3 of the bill, and the PG&E's portion of the bill is high. And there's just, it's hard for us to really make a dent in there because there's just some big policy and other initiatives that PG&E has to carry out. And so those costs are going to continue to be high for a while. But we do have more opportunities and more things that we'll focus on, including helping our customers reduce their bills by promoting energy efficiency and not just decarbonization. I think first and foremost, you should use your energy as efficiently as possible. With respect to the power cost and difference adjusters, or the PCIA, the state has opened a new proceeding related to the PCIA. We're very actively involved in that, along with CalCCA. But one of the things that's different this go around is that we're actually going out there and saying, give us the allocations, just make them permanent allocations and eliminate the PCIAs. So instead of us worrying about this thing that we can't plan around, this thing that creates huge uncertainty for us and for our ratepayers, let's look at the allocations of the clean resources, which includes nuclear and large hydro. And then again, regionalization is another opportunity. So our recommendation is to keep this one in place because overall rates continue to be high, and it's a top concern of our customers. And you heard that from Pam as well. Right. On the clean and reliable grid actions, again, this one, the primary thing here was to make sure that the board gave us clear directives on how we're to meet our 2045 and our annual kind of targets leading up to 2045. And the board did that. And so the board approved the clean energy targets, I think it was back in October, where you reaffirmed that our clean target is on an annual basis, most specifically not on a 24/7 basis, as some CCAs were hoping to do. and that we should try to get to 75% by 2030 for our renewable portfolio standard. So we're way on track there, as I mentioned earlier. Things happen and contracts get terminated and contracts get delayed and hydro conditions dry up, but we have really clear internal direction on what we're trying to achieve here now, and that's something that's important. There's still, again, a lot of challenges with this one and opportunities. So for that reason, we're recommending that we keep it in with a different focus now. It's not so much a focus about telling us what our North Star should be on our clean portfolio, but it's like looking at our portfolio and making sure that in the context of what happens at the state level, whether it's through the clean, the reliable and clean power procurement program, the RCPP, or through the central procurement entity that the state has set up, that we don't over procure or procure something that's not going to make sense, that we optimize our current resources for compliance and to minimize risk and to increase value to the portfolio so that ultimately this reduces our customer costs. So that's our focus, is more like how do we do the best of with what we have. This one. So expanding offerings to our C&I customers. Again, we've made a lot of progress here. This is one that takes years to really make a dent because you have to invest in these relationships. We have to earn their trust. When we go in and tell them that we want to be their energy partner or advisor, they have to believe that we are going to be that person for us. And so they almost have to come to us. And so we have made progress. And one of the big things that we launched this year was the C&I decarbonization program. We already have 6 customers enrolled in this program. And so that's tremendous progress. So, this is one of its first of its kind, I believe, where most of these programs were focused on water and energy efficiency. Nobody really focused on reducing decarbonization at a C&I site. So, but this again is going to be something that we continue to prioritize every year. And it's becoming more and more critical as we look at new loads coming into our service territory, including data centers or AI type centers. And they carry benefits that they're fairly large loads, but they also carry other challenges that they're also very energy intensive and they can also use a lot of water. And so there's other things there. So, but we think that's an opportunity actually for us to reformulate how we approach that type of load in these types of customers. So we're recommending keeping this as a priority as well. Okay, prepare the region for electrification at scale. So this really was focused on working with what was last year called the Bay Area Quality Management District, but now it's just called Bay Area District. Bad. On preparing for, preparing the area for these new rules that come into play in 2027 related to water heating system. Now with all the changes that are going on and the pressures that we're feeling from the federal level and the uncertainty around these rules, and our customers really wanting to help our member agencies and our customers do the right things and with respect to this and help them do it in a cost-effective way, we think this continues to be a priority for us, more so this year than it was before. So we're recommending that you keep this one as well. Attract and retain employees. Well, so we've attracted a lot of employees and we've kept all of our employees. And so we're in a really good spot here. A lot of our focus this last year has really been around building and maintaining a strong culture of excellence, collaboration, and fun. Because, people stay at jobs when they have fun. Even though, that's not something that's easy to measure. I think we measure it in the sense of when we get together or we're working together, are we collaborating? Are we making friends at work? Are we having really real connections here? And we don't do a survey, but my sense is that we do this very well. We've invested a lot of time and some resources in improving our collective knowledge on a lot of things. So creating individual development plans for certain employees, improving the leadership of this organization. We have a team called senior leadership team, because I believe everybody's a leader in this organization, but everybody needs to think that they are a leader too, and empowering them and giving them the authority and the tools to be leaders. So we spend a lot of time on that as well. So our recommendation is to keep this one, but it's really just to not focus on attraction, but just retention and preserving the culture. But we could also say that this one is one that we're in a really good place, that maybe doesn't have to be a board priority. It's one of those ones that if you take your eye off of it, it can easily become a problem, but we would incorporate it within our goals as it is right now. The next slide. All right, so that's just a summary. I'll just go through the next ones really quickly. This is our process again. Next slide. So here we are. So we're here for feedback from you all.
Hey, thank you. Very quick. Rapid. I didn't have the slides, but maybe you updated the deck since I downloaded it. So they are there. Okay. All right, because they were helpful. Director Klein.
So I'll be very quick. I think the priorities make total sense. I wouldn't change any of them. I think they're still very reasonable and the focus when we talked about cost, that's number one there. One of the things that we've done from a city standpoint is change our process. Only look at updating our priorities every other year and doing a 2-year work plan.
Yeah.
So that staff can actually make progress on those priorities and see that. So great to see all the efforts been made that's happened in the last year in each of these areas. I think that really shows, what this organization is really focused on moving forward, those priorities. I wouldn't change anything and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, to the 2-year point, I thought about introducing that last year, but since it was my first year, I didn't want to. But I think we're gonna recommend introduce that as going forward.
It also helps with it as the board changes. We don't want to force staff in the organization to pivot just because we have a slight change. And focusing on a 2-year horizon makes a lot more sense.
Okay, I'll say Larry said 2 years.
What you said.
What he said? Okay, that's very succinct.
I definitely want to also echo Vice Chair Klein's comments, and I see progress on all fronts. It's very obvious. So that my only comments really would be just any more that we can do for affordability. Always, I know that is obviously one of our, it's SFA number 1 actually, and with SFA 4, like scaling up, obviously we're always pursuing that. I will go back again to this light bulb that went over my head about the possibility for, I really think it's something that we should look into of the write-offs factor, to motivate, because that's a year after year thing for a home, people have tenants in their house, like, well, what am I gonna do for my write-off this year? Oh, well, I started with the heat pump. Well, maybe I'll get solar the next year. Maybe I'll get my electric charger because I have the tenants have an EV, the next year. It's something that can be a year after year thing until they completely max out, and there they have it. They have the perfect electric home just 3-5 years later, That's it. Thank you.
Very quickly, agree all 5, and I think retaining number 5 helps. We don't have to focus on it in terms of efforts, but keeping it there definitely keeps it in the mix. And I agree with you, last year was not the year to do 1 year. Last year as CEO. Affordability. The great results are not because this mix was done in September. The great results are because we started working on it way before that as an organization. So we are in tune, and I would keep them all. Some of the details in number 2 would change, as we are all aware, as you specifically called out. And this year and next year, there will be a lot of volatility, as we have talked in so many ways. That crazy chaotic slide just says it all beautifully. And I am good with everything here.
Okay, that leaves me. So ditto what everybody has said. But I almost wondered, although maybe this is Amrit's bailiwick, and he would incorporate in some of the risk testing, which I'm sure he will. But do we need another goal that says we that will be nimble to this fast changing environment. I mean, because we don't know what's gonna happen. And so obviously this will be captured in the stress test. That was what I was looking for as he does that. If you look at all the levers that we've been able to use, and if they all went away, you know, what does that look like? So and maybe it's just built in there, but should there be a focus on being nimble and prepared for the eventualities? Because we look and say, oh, we hope they don't get that, and we hope they don't get that, but instead of hoping, what does it look like if and when they do, right? And so what is our business model? How do we react to the worst? How do we hunker down, you know, for the duration?
Yeah, and that's, you know, we've been having those same internal discussions
Internal,
too,
yes,
and whether that should be a strategic focus area or just something that we're already doing anyway, right?
right.
To the number 4.
Well, it's bigger than number 4,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, when we talk about the levers, there's several ones, and again, we're a little bit kind of a four-armored, but the big levers that we have are the discount. What we want our reserves levels to look like, right? You know, what we plan for, and plan for 1% or less probability, then we're gonna have really big reserves. And then our clean portfolio, quite frankly, that's a big cost driver. And as I mentioned before, it's a big cost driver, and it's probably gonna get bigger and bigger and bigger. So the board has affirmed that they want to be 100% clean. So we're going with that unless the board tells us, no, we changed our mind, then we have that as a lever, as a dial that the big dials are the discount and the reserve targets. And there are other tools that we're looking at, like how do we supplement our reserves target? Like, do we set up a line of credit? Do we do it? So we're looking at all of that, but it's really more operational than it is strategic. If we were to have a strategic discussion, it would be around the discount and the reserves.
Right.
And whether you want to make that a new priority to rethink how we do that, as opposed to just doing it. We'll have that discussion every year with the board as part of the budget process. But do you want to have it be a more long-term thing?
Right. And one other point of that, exactly where you went, is affordability, but visible affordability. We've had the discussion before where the discount is at all visible and or meaningful. So again, I'm not, so as we talk about that, it should be part of it.
Just a question, sorry, in the interest of time, I missed it. What I had marked is the point that is just being made about the Monica, you said we are financially in a good position, but at the same time, Amrit will talk about the risk assessment, understood. So my question that I earlier jotted down was, so how is it connected, or where rather, in the strategic focus areas? And maybe some of the language can be changed in one of these to bring that out.
Yeah.
And in the interest of time, I won't even say, give us the details, but that is the important part. And thank you, Sally, for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Jog my memory.
And then I'm gonna bring one that we haven't touched on before, and I'm not suggesting we discuss it here, and it wouldn't be a strategic focus area necessarily, but it does tie on to what I was just saying, being nimble and prepared for whatever the, hunkering down in the environment looks for. If there are other CCA failures, what would we do about that? Would we be in position to acquire, say, our neighbors next door and grow? So because we have reserves, I think we're in stronger position. So are there weaker ones that are gonna lose it in this environment? And what do we do about that? Let's not cover it today. But I am throwing it as a real possibility of something that think about just a little bit, but not today. So. Okay, and we haven't done public comment. Do we have public comment?
Yes.
Carney,
It's
yes.
another opportunity.
Yes.
So you may not know that there have been times in the past when CCAs in the Bay Area charged more than PG&E. And there was no obvious reduction in customer counts. So a weak CCA would certainly have the opportunity to raise their rates. Maybe they would lose some customers, but I don't think that any existing CCA will fail because they have to raise their rates so high that their customers all defect. C&I customers are the most likely to defect because it's a bigger number and they pay more attention. I think the affordability focus is really important. I have three thoughts in particular. So how is the SVCE going to make my bill go up by eliminating ELEC 1.0 before ELEC 2.0 is in place? That 6-month period from July 1 to January 1, I will be paying more than I used to because of the board decision. So not happy, but there's only 5,000 people affected by that one. What about people who are eligible for CareFira, but they're not on it? I've read and heard that about a quarter of the people who are eligible aren't on it. So does SVCE have either explicit data customer by customer or SEVI data saying, oh, in the part of Mountain View that is the lowest income, we think that maybe there's not as many people. So targeted outreach to areas where some of the data that you have suggests that you could save substantial money, 20%, I think it is, for a lot of homeowners or renters. And then the third thing is an anecdote about wrong rate plan. So I was recently at the home of a woman who's deeply committed to environmental action. She's had an all-electric home for quite some time, and she was just installing solar on the roof and batteries on the wall. And she said, take a look at my bill. So I took a look at her bill, and it said that her heat source was gas, not electricity. And it said, and she was on TOU-C, which is the wrong rate plan for somebody with all the electric things she had in her home. Does SVCE have any ability to look at individual customers' choice of rate plan and suggest to them proactively that maybe they're on the wrong setup? And one last point is PG&E has a tool to let you compare all the rate plans they offer. But once ELEC 2.0 comes around and it's not a PG&E offered plan, I hope SVCE has a better tool than PG&E that includes ELEC 2.0 so that you'll be able to suggest to customers, go see if you're on the most affordable plan.
Very good. Feedback. Do we have online comments?
No public comment.
Okay, so do you have what you need from this discussion? I mean,
I think so.
we supported the existing, but we also threw a lot of else at you.
And
Yeah,
as we go through the budget process and you see the
Right.
situation that we're in,
Yes.
we expect there to be maybe some evolution on these as well.
Mhm.
And so we may end up with slightly different things that we bring to the board when we bring the final. And so I think that that's just part of the process.
All
Do
right.
you expect this to be a regular item as opposed to consent?
No, regular items.
That will be regular.
Yeah,
I would
that
recommend.
makes, yeah, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
And that's in August.
Okay, so there's some time.
And you'll also get the budget in August too.
So good, we're all good.
It'll be a meaty meeting. Okay, so building feedback. That'll be
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was a good
news.
And then, yeah,
Yes.
and fun.
Fun again.
Stand up too.
Good. Thanks, Joey. Okay, I know everybody's also getting hungry, so. Okay, I may not, okay, there we go. All right. So as everyone in this room knows, we held this interactive session at the new building to get input on particularly how to use the community space and the board chamber. I'm going to quickly give a recap of the session. These are this is the high level. We have detailed notes because we've got, especially in the board chamber, we've got lots of very good specific information. But what we heard was flexible, comfortable space, making sure that it's safe and has the kind of all the right features. We heard a lot about technology, making sure to make the meetings efficient. We also heard about really making a space where people would feel welcome to come in and participate in meetings. So that's really kind of integrated with the public, which was also something that we heard about the community space too. Okay. Then the community space. So we have these, we did a dot exercise. And so some of this, you can kind of count up the numbers, which dots went where, but there was also a lot of conversation. So the takeaways here and also the deeper takeaways try to reflect both that kind of more quantifiable prioritization exercise, but also with all of the feedback that we heard through the discussion. So a couple of notes here, we heard a lot about kind of what I'm using the word is like workforce ecosystem for electrification, how we could make it an engaging space that would bring in sales folks, manufacturers, contractors, restaurateurs, people that are really the people part of electrification. We also heard pretty consistently that additional revenue and cost recovery were not the kind of most important. These are the ways that there is the most consistency. And then it was really interesting to do the second prioritization, right? So folks remember when we first were doing it, we were going a little more big brain. You could kind of choose more different things. And it was in that first part of the exercise too, where we actually got a lot of these ideas and kind of heard this idea about the workforce ecosystem. We heard a lot about community integration, making it a place where people felt that they would just come and be at for different types of events. I think we heard like as a cooling center, things like that, where people would kind of show up and be able to learn in a fun way. And then when we went forward and did this reprioritization, the things that really came up at the top were those two things of kind of that workforce electrification ecosystem and making a place that was really integrated with the community, fun and engaging. So there's a picture. This just summarizes what I just said more crisply. There's a lot of talk about kind of a commercial kitchen as a way to bring people in, and a lot of talk about just entertainment and making it fun in general. A nice, clean. Right, this is the summary of what I just said. And so going on to the timeline. So actually today we are reviewing the applications for architects. And so the next big step in this process will be finalizing a contract with the architects. And through that process is where we'll get more specific ideas. We'll be able to actually take these priorities and turn them into proposed plans. And then you see kind of going forward, we'll get additional actual approval, begin conducting work, and then hopefully in Q2 of next year, be ready to move in, use this wonderful space. We did talk at the meeting, and this will also continue to come up as we go from priorities to concept and design. That will also require some work planning. So we may decide about different stagings of the construction and all of those sorts of things. So those are the key next steps. And if there's anything that I missed or anybody feels like they want to add or change in how we summarize the feedback, we'd be happy to hear your input.
Very quickly, there's a lot of detail for both chambers. The only thing that I recall very specifically design-wise, which is not flexible, is the need for a raised dais for the board.
Yes, that is true. Yep.
That's the only thing I wanted.
Yes.
I thought it was a great event all around. I like that you invited both directors and alternates at the same time, and I also like that you invited the public, and also was surprised and tickled that you allowed them to vote, same as us. So it's just right up there.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, they wouldn't have been there if they didn't care. So I thought that all worked out.
Absolutely. Just quick comment, especially after the survey, and affordability is top of mind clearly for folks. And so it didn't win on the board necessarily, but the community space in regards to like, I'm thinking about like affordability issues, you know, like, Hanford, we did such an amazing thing there. It seems like great community organizations that are gonna really help the community there, like weatherization, for example, things of that nature. So even if it's not down in the showroom floor, maybe some upstairs space for community organization, I'm still gonna personally push for that, for specifically affordability, whatever that may entail, but any groups that we can have that can help. I'd love for people to just walk in the door, oh, come on upstairs, we have your space, and they'll help you. We'll look at your bill, you know, whatever needs to happen, but that's my only comment. And wonderful, it was a wonderful event.
Any other comments? All right, any public comments?
Indeed, I'm gonna go 5 for 5 today.
Right on.
Go right ahead.
So the reason I was late is I went back to the building to just walk around it, make sure I had a sense of it. I reached out to my friend Mike Balma, who is one of the people who lead Sunwork. Sunwork is a 501c3 that for many years has been installing rooftop solar using trainee labor under the supervision of a licensed contractor.
I'm one of those volunteers.
Okay. And
Oh, yeah?
they-
With my Rotary Club.
Oh, that's okay.
We now also do heat pump installations, heat pump water heater installations.
Oh.
And I thought, now, if there were ever a community group that I would like to allocate some space to in the new building, it's Sunwork. And so he said, well, you know, we're getting kicked out of the Sobrato Center. They have about 800 square feet there. Sobrato is changing their focus to housing related things. He said, you know, what we do with water heaters is we bring them in and then we take them out and install them. Does the building have like a loading bay door? It doesn't now. On the other hand, the doors are pretty tall and water heaters aren't that tall, but the access from the parking lot to the doors on the parking lot side probably could be improved so a pallet jack could roll through them. It's the concrete next to the parking lot that doesn't seem quite ready for that to me. He said, well, we wouldn't want to have somebody in there all the time waiting to talk to people, but maybe we could have a day or two a week or a day or two a month when we would have staff there. So this would, brings to mind that perhaps contractors who don't have a point of presence, retail point of presence, might want to sign up for a day a month and help augment the SVCE staff in having conversations with customers about specific projects. So that's all I want to say about that. It's a beautiful building and there's going to be a lot of empty space on the ground floor unless creative ideas are implemented.
Thank you. Any online public comment?
Online.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing. That was a great summary and a great event. All right.
We have one more.
One more item. It's at noon, so we're not doing too badly.
And I'm sensitive to the fact that there's food waiting outside for us, so
Okay.
I'll impart all the information and we can adjourn
Yes.
hopefully in just a few minutes here.
Yeah.
But we wanted to give you an update today about our contractor training program. It's been a while since anyone on the board has heard very much about this. Formerly, you would have heard about it as Future Fit Fundamentals. I have another name for this program, which is the Gem of the Pandemic. The reason is,
Sounds like a video game.
so this is more exciting than a video game. The reason I call it that is because it was originally born out of the CRCR package that was approved early on in the pandemic. I believe it was the April convening of the board after the world had first shut down. Out of that package, there was 1.5 million allocated to workforce development. And one of the very earliest ideas of staff was to funnel some of that money into a training program for contractors who at the time were basically grounded and not able to work while we figured out and assessed the situation with the virus. So we developed this idea that in order to supplement the income of these contractors, we could pay them to learn about electrification, which would then in turn put more electrification projects out into the world. What we found was that in order to put a quality product out, as is the case many times when you do something for the first time, it took longer than we expected. And by the time that this launched, contractors were back to work. Could you advance the slide, please? So there was a little bit of a shift in our approach. So rather than a captive audience that we had in theory, we now had a audience that was back to work, trying to thrive. And so we were looking to sort of wedge ourselves into their busy schedule. And so what we have now, as we've adapted to the times, is an ecosystem of two separate small programs that make up contractor training. The first is a video training series, which consists of 5 videos that include quizzes that folks must pass to be able to graduate from the course. The second part of this is a stipend for installations that graduates of the program receive for having completed installations that are rebated by SVCE's home upgrades program.
Yeah.
Home upgrades program. And so the goals shift a little bit. In addition to wanting to educate a diverse workforce, we've reached out to general builders, electricians, plumbers, HVAC, and solar contractors to invite them to take this. We're also looking to help convert these folks into almost a boots on the ground sales force for electrification. Go ahead. So what are we doing and how are we doing it? Well, the idea was always to incentivize these contractors with a little bit of money in their pocket to learn about SVCE's mission. And so when they take the training course and pass all of the quizzes, they automatically receive a $500 stipend for having taken our training. Once graduated, they get an additional $500 up to $5,000 per year, so 10 installations, for completing projects through the home upgrades program. So where we are today is that we've had 296 completions of the training program, which is fantastic. So these could be business owners, these could be technicians who are outperforming the work. We don't put a cap on the number of people within a company who can take the training. Install bonuses is at 212, which is getting very near to parity with the number of people who have completed the training. But the interesting part is that that bonus has existed for half the time. So we're really seeing the bonus take off gangbusters. And it's really working to incentivize more installations as we had intended. The pie chart there shows us that roughly half of the projects that have been rebated through home upgrades program have been installed by contractors who have graduated the training. So this is really progressing nicely. Go ahead. Part of the reason for that is that we found this to be an incredibly powerful feedback loop, to have the integration really of 3 programs into just sort of one ecosystem that all synergistically supports each other. And so what we've got in this process off to the right is a journey map of how a contractor can continue to churn out electrification programs and receive rebates. And each time a new SVCE customer is also receiving a rebate for a project. Essentially, they enter the process at the top left, complete their training, and they're paid for the first time. With the additional incentive of the bonus stipend, they may reach people that SVCE have not yet been successful in reaching and speaking to about our rebates. And so if they get a call for a fossil to fossil replacement of an appliance, which is still a valid part of their business, they may think to themselves, electrification is a good fit here. I also will receive an additional bonus. Let me recommend electrification to this customer and use SVCE rebates as a selling tool to close the deal. And so in that way, we've seen these bonuses really start to take off. And it also helps us to solidify the relationships with these contractors while almost like deputizing them to make sure that they're getting electrification out on behalf of the agency. Next slide, please. So we've surveyed our contractors. We know surveys are very powerful. And the feedback that we've gotten on this program is overwhelmingly positive. For the most part, folks are finding this easy to use, easy to navigate, and helpful in growing their understanding. Having been here for a number of years myself and being at the agency when we first launched the heat pump water heater 1.0 program way back in 2018-19, it was difficult to find a contractor on the phone and ask them, what do you work with heat pump water heaters? And they'd say, what is that? Right. And so watching the change over time has been really great because now contractors are knocking down the door and knocking out these projects left and right. We're kicking rebates out every day. Top feedback, of course, is that contractors were thrilled that we enlisted top talent and personalities to help co-host the program. I had nothing to do with soliciting that feedback. Last slide, Andrea. So we developed this program to be more or less evergreen in the sense that the videos talk about heat pumps in a way that will always be true, but it doesn't necessarily capture new innovations or new technology that comes on the scene. It doesn't also it doesn't capture new market knowledge that we might come to understand. So while the original 5 videos will probably be evergreen for a very long time, we've discussed the possibility of adding to the videos. And so some of the potential topics could be main panels and right sizing. As we now understand that most electrification can occur on a 100 amp panel, this saves customers money, it helps to ease strain on the grid. And we think it's important that contractors learn this early on their journey to making electrification part of the profitability of their business. And the other video series that we considered are covering some information about small commercial appliances that employ heat pumps. There's sort of a gap, I think, between the residential contractor, the very large industrial mechanical contractors, and then in the middle, there are those who may have a retail space or a small office space that don't need heavy mechanical upgrades, in which case many of the same types of appliances, but a larger size may be appropriate. This also fits well with our business rebates program, which is led by Kayla on my team, where we're actually engaging with some of these small businesses and looking to help upgrade those appliances. So these are currently exploratory only. We have no firm plans to implement anything this year or next necessarily, but more so we have our ears to the street. And if there's clamoring from our contractors that want to hear about these new and exciting topics, we can potentially incorporate it into the program.
Hey, thank you. That's exciting. Director Wally is ready.
I'll be very quick and I'll roll some comment that I was going to make at the end of the meeting. The question is for this. So I'll start with the thank you, great presentation. Thank you for all the work. It's very exciting to see where we are today. Also very exciting, today Saratoga News has an article on the competitive grant from SVCE that my city won to convert city's buildings, almost $500,000 grant from gas to electric. And one of those, the historic home, is going to be a demonstration site and all of that. So how are the contractors going to know that those possible locations are there where they could showcase their work? Because that site is going to be having electric HVAC and heat pump water heater, all of that. So I'm tying it to the contractor and pulling the rest of my comment, and thank you for to the whole team. But the question is specifically.
So in that process, I assume there's going to be some sort of open solicitation to have the work
Of course.
done.
Yeah. So the question is, how are we, the ones we are educating, how are we connecting more information? Where are the possibilities?
I think that this is actually sort of a new world for the program. Currently, we're educating the contractors that have graduated, but maybe not participated in a home upgrades bonus. And so we're actively reaching out to folks who've taken the training, but not necessarily completed an installation. And we're working the same process vice versa. So if we have contractors who have done upgrades, but not taken the training, we're telling them, look, you're leaving money on the table every single time that you install. And so that's been effective. Where we have not really ventured in is taking SVCE's own internal knowledge about projects that are coming or on the forefront and spreading those out to contractors.
Just a thought, and I did notice that 50% that are installing today have not taken the training. Then they can do better, and as you add more videos with the panel right sizing, that's a big thing. That would help everyone, including the customers. That's a big one.
Absolutely.
So really appreciate that. Thank you.
I'll just add that we also have a find a contractor page on our website. So if customers are looking for a contractor, they can go there and look at a list of contractors who have done installations with SVCE's rebate program. So that's a great, and it's a pretty long list of folks who have installed across our service territory.
So I'm gonna tag on to that because that was one of my questions. So you'd go into the search box and say, find a contractor, or is it, how do I find
It's
that
just a
place? to-
PDF list, so you.
Right, but
just-
where, how do I find that PDF?
Oh,
so-
if you go to SVC's website and search for find a contractor,
Yes,
yeah,
that's what I
page
was
page
saying,
will come
okay,
up. Yeah.
got it,
Uh-huh.
all right. Director Klein.
Very quick. So as far as the 212, what's the kind of distribution as far as contractors? So do we have, 5 or 10 that are basically the big winners and a few of them, or do you see kind of a continuation?
We do up to an extent. And I think to your point, we recognize that there are larger companies who may have 50 technicians out there in the world. And there's also the small mom and pop shop.
Right.
Who gets enough work, but they're not on the same scale, which is why we implemented the 10 bonus per year limit.
Correct.
We do currently have that limit tied to the technician rather than the company. We did that because in the early phases, we did not see any runaways as far as a company had gone. So I would say that today the distribution is pretty fair.
Okay. Okay, and definitely if that data could be presented in some way at a
Absolutely.
future date would be useful. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Good. Any other questions? Okay, and then I'm gonna follow up to my question, which is the reverse. So if I'm a contractor and I want to know how to get trained, where do I send them?
We can provide links after this meeting,
Yes, that
but
would
there's
be
a dedicated SVCE webpage
Uh-huh.
where they would sign up. It's a very simple form.
Right.
Once they're approved,
Mhm.
all of the learning platform is online and self-paced.
Okay, great. So I can forward that to, because I did have a question once, I didn't have the answer. So, all right, great. Any public comment? Okay, anything online? No? All right, so with that, I think if we have any committee or staff comments on anything in sundry?
And we all know we will, if we need to schedule in July, Andrea will hold the for July
Okay.
meeting. Otherwise, have a great summer.
Most of
Basically.
the summer, yes. And with that,
Just,
oh,
so I will be
wait.
missing the next board meeting, and Vice Chair Klein will be taking over, and my alternate will be there
All right.
Who's your alternate?
for this one.
Okay, all right, good. So with that, we are adjourned.
All right.
All right. Time for two.
Get it.
No idea. I don't know.